Hi guys, so as we all know, the last couple of weeks COVID-19 numbers have been on the up again very severely. So Klang Valley is now under CMCO until 27 October. So guys, let's do our part. Let's stay at home and hopefully keep the numbers down, and we don't and let's try to avoid a real full lockdown. We really don't want that to happen anymore. So yeah, so with that, I'm coming back to doing my home based videos, and today once again I'll be revisiting my past. All right. And the car I'll be talking about today is the BMW F10 5 Series. Why the F10 5 Series? Because this the F10 5 Series is the one model that I have reviewed more variants than any other vehicle in the market during throughout my career. Okay, so to recap, right, the F10 5 Series was launched in Malaysia May 2010. All right, I remember it was about 6 months thereabouts after the W212 E-Class launch, and at that time they launched the F10 was CBU, and they only offered two variants. You can choose between the 523i, which had a 2.5 liter N52 engine with 204 horsepower, 250 newton meters of torque. Then of course at the other end is the 535, which had the 3 liter twin scroll turbo N55 engine with 306 horsepower, 400 or 450 newton meters of torque. 306 horsepower, 400 newton meters of torque. One thing about the BMW, the F10 5 Series, it was one of the first. It was the first or second. Well, it was one of the earlier models to use the ZF 8 HP 8-speed automatic transmission. Still, until today, one of the best torque converter automatic transmissions in the business. And given a choice, I'd take this gearbox over any bloody DCT any day. Okay, yeah. So initially they were launched CBU, and they were priced at the 523 at that time was priced at just under 400,000. The 535 just under 600,000 ringgit. And later on, not long after that, the 523 began local assembly in Kulim, and then shortly after that, they also introduced the 528 into the locally assembled range. So at that time, initially the lineup was 523, 2.5 liter NA, 204 horsepower, 528, 3 liter NA, how many horsepower? 258 horsepower, locally assembled. Then fully imported 535, 306 horsepower, 600,000 ringgit. Okay, so the interesting thing is about the F10's engine lineup is this: it differs according to region. So if in Europe, the 523 and the 528 would actually from using a different engine family. They were using the N53, which is a development of the N52, but with which is naturally aspirated, but it has direct injection, and they both displace 3 liters. All right, and they have more torque. So they have more torque than the N52 engines. The only problem with the N53 engines, sulfur. They can't take a high sulfur fuel. So BMW never offered that engine in Malaysia, in Australia, or in even the US. Right, that engine is mostly reserved for the European market. So if you were shopping in the grey market at that time, a UK spec F10, if you're talking about the pre N20 versions, right, would have had the N53 engine, whereas a Malaysia spec, or I think even a Japan spec, would be the N52 engine. Okay, so initially, so my first experience driving the F10 was the 535, and I was absolutely at that time blown away by the car's performance, because they didn't dress the car in M Sport trim. It was just standard exterior trim. The only difference you can tell it from the 523 is that you have to look at the rims, you have to look at the exhaust configuration, one on each side. All right, the 523 would have been twin tailpipes on the left side, and I think 535 had a sunroof, whereas the 523 didn't. Same headlight design. Okay, so but that thing was fast. It was ridiculously fast. Let's read back what I said of the car at that time. So what did I say? Having 400 Newton meters of torque at your disposal almost throughout the rev range is promising enough of paper, but its application in the real world proved devastating. Even at 230 kilometers per hour, it was still accelerating hard. I think I touched 237 in that car. And blah 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 blah. Gentle-footed drivers can probably potter around KL in decent pace without having to breach 2000 RPM. That's true. But yeah, the ZF 8-speed gearbox, fantastic, and this was the earliest iteration of that gearbox. One thing I did not have a very good impression of was the ride comfort, because this is what I said. On the subject of pottering, that's probably the time when you would like to set your dynamic driving control to comfort mode. Well, it doesn't work. For some reason, the F10 did not feel at all comfortable in this setting. The suspension telegraphs a shocking amount of road imperfections into the cabin. The best setting to use was actually sport mode, where everything just sharpened: throttle response, steering, gear change, and ride firmness. Strangely, the car actually seemed to absorb road shocks better in this setting than in comfort mode, but with the throttle response almost set to kill, this is not exactly the best mode to use for a Sunday cruise either. Along winding back roads, the 535i was amazingly agile, steering was nicely weighted and very precise, even though feedback did not feel as authentic as good old hydraulic assist systems. When pushed hard through corners, there was nary a hint of understeer as the car faithfully holds on to the chosen line. We have to remember that the F10 at that time was an integral active steer, which is the F10 was the first BMW, I think, to use electric power steering, and at that the early batches of the F10 came with integral active steer, so the rear wheels, well, when you're driving fast, when you're driving fast, when you make when you turn the steering, the rear wheels turn in the same direction to a maximum of 2 degrees. But if you're at low speed, the wheels will turn opposite direction. The reason behind this is that at high speed, the wheels will turn the same direction to give you better lane changing stability. At lower speeds, the wheels will turn opposite direction so that it makes the car more agile on the turn. So it's yeah, but overall, this is a very, very effective machine if you want to cover a lot of distance at a very, very high speed. Now, my article for the 523i, which I reviewed earlier, is lost because of Autoworld's servo migration, system migration, somewhere along the way. But I remember when I drove the 523 much later. Actually, to think back, right, the 523 feels a bit like my E39 520i in the sense that at low speeds, at standstill, from takeoff, right, it's very leisurely. You need to build up speed, you need to build up momentum, you need to build up revs, in order to truly, fully enjoy the car, to get the best performance out of the car. But in terms of kit, the 523 also loses quite a bit of things compared to the 535. 535 had reverse camera, had keyless entry, had heads up display. A lot of these things were gone in the 523. But I think the one thing that I most cannot tahan in the 523 would be the wheels, those 17-inch wheels. Oh my god, they just look small in the F10's body. It just never fit. And the funny thing is that those rims, they carried over to the 520i. They use it on the 520d as well. So most of the F10s you see on the road, that that the owners didn't make the effort to modify them, they'll be rolling along in these less than flattering looking rims. And the tires that they fitted into the car, the Goodyear Excellence tires, also did not really maximize the chassis dynamics of the F10. So yeah, so I think the 523, well, the engine was not, you can enjoy that engine if you are willing to work it hard. But if you what you want is effortless performance, the 523, I don't remember it being, it doesn't give that, at all. All right. Later on, I also drove the 528, which was nice, and let me just see what did I write about the 528. With the 528, I actually wrote something like a bit of obituary piece, a eulogy piece for the six-cylinder engine in general. Alright, so the smoothness of this engine as you pull the tacho to its red line, and soundtrack that accompanies, make for a very satisfying and fulfilling driving experience. And it's still a very fast car, though not in the kick in the pants sort of way, aided by its smooth sailing. 8-speed auto acceleration is smooth and seamless. 200 kilometers per hour is very easily accessible if you have a long enough streak to try it. I can't remember if I did. Alright, so didn't make any further comments on that later. Then after much later, end of 2011, BMW launched the M5, and I was very fortunate to be invited to Spain, to Seville, to test drive the car. All right, Crispy was actually in that trip with me. That long ago. He was representing. Oh, he was with Malaysian Evo at that time. Okay. Yeah. So it was quite an adventure, that trip. Yeah, we were put in a resort. God knows where. All right. Nothing within walking. No attraction within walking distance. So yeah. But hey, I was just 2 years into this line of work, and chance to drive an M5 right in Europe, so that was a memorable experience for sure. And to share my comments on that car. So as we drove out of the brick paved compound of our hotel in Seville, one immediately noticed quality was how smooth riding the M5 was. Indeed, it felt even more comfy than the 6-cylinder 5 Series models that we've tested over the past 1 year. Yeah, some reason, right? When I drove the 523, 528, and 535, the comfort levels of the cars at that time didn't quite impress me. Yeah, so it was remarkably refined on the road. The word you're looking for is accessibility. Make no mistake, this M5 is mind-blowingly fast, but its colossal pace is not any way difficult to access. Even at very illegal speeds, the M5 feels completely at ease, and what's better, it puts you at ease as well. At full pelt, the V8 up front makes a pleasing growl and propels you forward at an amazing rate of acceleration. From double digits, you reach the double ton in no time and almost zero effort. Quite simply, speeds in excess of 200 kilometers per hour feel like another day in the office. I think I hit 247. That was the fastest I saw on the heads-up display. Oh yeah, just a bit of trivia. Did you know that 4.4 liter V8 engine in the F10 M5, which is now carried over to the F90 M5, has two ECUs. So the V8, all right, it has one ECU on this side, one ECU on this side, but you know they're both cross connected. Okay, so well, the F10 M5, I think it will not make any enthusiast lists of the best M5 ever or anybody's favorite M5 ever. But this is still a very, very capable car. All right, and it's still a properly fast car. I mean in its original configuration, the M5 was good for 560 horses, but the final iterations was pushing more than 600 horses out, and still rear-wheel drive. So these things are fast. And another interesting point about the M5 is that the regular F10s had switched to electric power steering, but the M5 was hydraulic, and the M5 doesn't have integral active steer. The regular 5 series do. Okay, so yeah, and I remember also we were taken to Ascari racetrack, and it was quite an experience. So we drove, we drove on track. BMW instructor driving another car ahead of us. Same car, F10 M5. We were coming out of the corner. All right. So as I went past Apex, full throttle. I went full throttle. Everything down to Sport Plus, the hardest setting to get. And the Chiba in front of me is still pulling away, even though it's already a straight line. I was holding my steering. I was mind blown. What sorcery is this? But you know, there you go, right? So that was a crazy experience. But yeah, it was one of the definitely one of the most memorable trips of my motoring journalism career. And yeah, so that trip, BMW also had a secondary agenda on that trip. They also let us test out the N20 variants of the M5 of the 5 series. So at that time, the N20 engine was new. So we tried out the 520i and the 528i, both of them in touring form. So I've driven an F10 touring. And well, let's see what I had to say at that time about them. So the 520i, as experienced on the mix of narrow streets and open highways in Seville, the 520i is best used as a cruiser. It is brisk, not overly rapid, but there was a need to be conservative when it came to trunk road overtaking. Means that if I see a gap, I have to think twice before overtaking. One aspect of the new 520i particularly deserving of praise, and we discovered this to be true of other variants tested as well, was its markedly improved ride quality over the existing F10 5 series. These new 4-cylinder 5s absorb surface harshness way better compared to the existing 523, 528 and 535i reviewed back home. So the numbers, right? The 520i, 184 horsepower, 270 Newton meters of torque, compared to the 523 before that. The 523 had more horsepower, 204, but less torque, 250 Newton meters. And the N52 engine in Malaysia, the torque band was much narrower. The peak torque was from 2750 RPM to 300 RPM, and I believe that was also because the engine was detuned. Remember, this engine in the E6525 was going about what, 211 horsepower. So 204 horsepower, this is already slightly detuned, so that gives it a wider torque band because of its more conservative setup. If you look at the European version, the 3-liter 523i, same horsepower, 204, but the torque, maximum torque was 270 Newton meters from 1500 to 4250 RPM. Yeah, so but that 3-liter engine there also is even more detuned, so it's a very relaxed, very very undertuned engine. I remember a few years ago I actually saw an F10, a 523i manual with the N53 engine on sale in car list. The time was in 2016, going for about 80k, very cheap at that time. Was almost tempted to buy it. But yeah, so I also drove the 528 Touring, and on the road, the new 528i has good bags of pace at its disposal. Its additional pace over the 520i was obvious, with far less effort required for overtaking. This engine was more than up to the task of hauling our 1,725 kilogram touring test car. But as you hit the upper reaches of the tachometer, the sweet melody that was the hallmark of BMW's inline 6 engines is now amiss. So if you look at the numbers, the N20 528i made 245 horsepower, 350 Newton meters of torque, which is the kind of numbers I get from my S-Max. The 528 3-liter, the 3-liter N52 version made 258 horsepower higher. Torque is 310 from 2600 to 3000 RPM, okay, which is the same peak figures as the N53, but the N53 made its 310 Newton meters of torque over a wider band, right, 2600 all the way to 5000 RPMs. So yeah, and after that I also drove a 520D manual, which had absolutely nothing to do with our market, but I just thought, hey, since it's there, right, it was free and easy time. I went to the test drive counter and asked, what other cars do you have? They said, oh, we have a 520D Efficient Dynamics Edition manual. I said, hey, okay, I'm interested. So I grabbed the keys and tried it. So what did I say? Well, the 6-speed manual shifter slots precisely and was a joy to use. Clutch action was well weighted, not overly tight, not overly heavy to raise your risk of hernia. Winding trunk roads were best negotiated in a combination of third and fourth gears, with second needing only to pull out of the tightest corners. What I didn't mention here at that time was that it's nice to drive a manual, a manual 5 Series. It's nice to try it out, right? But the not so nice part of it is that heel and toe downshifting, okay, because it's a diesel, and diesel engines, despite their torque, despite having superior torque, they are slow to rev. So when you want to heel toe with a diesel engine, your revs don't climb as quickly. So when you're downshifting, when you want to rapidly heel and toe, you will not, when you use your heel to step on the gas, the revs don't build up quick enough for you to be able to release the clutch smoothly. So that part of it, didn't really enjoy the experience. But yeah, it's nice to be able to tell that I've driven the F10 Touring, I've driven the F10 with a manual transmission. So that trip from Seville, the return journey also, there was a bit of drama in the return journey. So we were flying, you know, to Seville, right? There were a few transit flights. All right, and I think we flew KL, Bangkok. What was it? Then Frankfurt, Madrid, Seville. So we were supposed to reverse that course on the way back. So what happened was that our flight from our on the way back, we flew Seville to Madrid. Then our flight from Madrid to Frankfurt was delayed. All right, and I remember when we landed in Frankfurt. So for those of you guys, if you yeah, if you've never been to Europe, right? When you fly into Europe, you only stamp your passport once. That's it. All right, then you're free to move about in all the countries except UK and Switzerland. So I remember when we landed in Frankfurt, we got out of the bunch of us, a whole bunch of us media, Malaysian media. Right? We got out of the plane, we ran out, because we knew we were running late. Right? We ran out. We looked for the monitors, see where's the gate to the for the flight to Bangkok. Then we ran to first we have to run to immigration, get our passport stamp, all right, run through security again, and then we finally reach our gate. And I tell you this, I seriously shit you not, right? The drama. The plane was still there. But the doors closed already, and this is the rule with international travel or with airports. Once the plane closes the door, you will not be allowed to board. And if you have check-in luggage, they will take out your check-in luggage before anything, before they fly off, right? In case you are terrorists or what. So all of us, we just stood there, 左高咗 already. Look at the plane there. Huh? Then and it was late at night. It was like, I think something like 11:30 p.m. that kind of time. So we went to the airport counter. We explained them the situation. It was, but the funny thing is, it was off office hours, and the guy who's behind the counter was like really grumpy, I know. So we didn't get a good explanation, and it took us quite a while. All right, before we were informed that the airline, Lufthansa at the time, they had already anticipated that we were going to be late to not going to make the flight. So we were already booked on separate flights home. Now I remember Crispy was booked to fly from Frankfurt to Turkey and then back to Malaysia. The rest of us, every one of us, we were booked to fly we were put in a hotel for one night, airport hotel for one night, all on the airline's bill lah, of course. Airport for one night, we were given food vouchers, which to me read free alcohol. And yeah, so we checked into the airport hotel, you know, grabbed dinner at the hotel lounge. And next morning we flew. So we were the rest of us, we were flown home via, where was it? It was in Hyderabad, India, Hyderabad. I still remember somewhere I kept the flight ticket somewhere. So we were flown to Hyderabad, and from Hyderabad we were booked into a Malaysian Airlines flight. And the experience didn't just end there. So we landed in Hyderabad. Then we were taken to security, and we were also taken into the luggage area. So we brought to the luggage area, and we check, hey, is this your suitcase? I said, oh yeah, okay, check the suitcase. Then suitcase go into the plane, and I still remember two things. When I reached Hyderabad, when I reached the Hyderabad airport, something struck me about the airport. There's a sense of familiarity to that airport. And later on, I found out that the Hyderabad airport is actually built by Malaysian Airports Berhad, right? Something like this. And the other thing is, when I finally boarded the flight, right, you know, after the whole trip flying Lufthansa, there is that warm feeling when I stepped into a Malaysia Airlines plane. And that brings me also to digress a bit. And you know, it makes me sad, you know, to read about Malaysia Airlines today. You know, that even rumors that it may even be shut down. So for me, Malaysia Airlines always holds a special place in my heart. Despite the troubles that they have over the years, I've had more pleasant than unpleasant experiences flying Malaysia Airlines. And yeah, it's an airline that always has, there's something about the Malaysian Airlines crew that, you know, that every time when they welcome me aboard a flight, there's that feeling of warmth in there. So if any of you guys watching, if you are a Malaysian Airlines crew, just want to say thank you to you guys. Every time, right, when I fly Malaysia Airlines, you guys always make the experience pleasant for me. All right, so yeah, hope you guys hang in there, and hope the company pulls through this, and hope you guys will still have a job, you know, once you emerge from the COVID-19 crisis. And yeah, so that I got home, and 22, I think, considering the circumstances, I was home 22 hours later than my initial planned time, which honestly I think to me was fantastic given the circumstance. But well, I think we digressed a bit. Let's come back to the 5 series. So yep, came back F10M5. Then it was in January 2011, right? Was it January 2011? Yeah, so sorry, January 2012 that BMW Malaysia launched the F10 5 series with the N20 engines. So at that time the 520i was priced at just under 360,000, which was a 20,000 ringgit price drop from the 523, and the 528 was 410,000 ringgit, which is a 40k drop from the 3-liter 528. So car got a bit cheaper, and I think a few months later I got to test drive the 528i M Sport, and it was then I came to the conclusion that of the entire F10 range, right, the whole F10 range, the N20 528 2.0, 245 horsepower, that is the sweet spot of the F10 5 series range in terms of performance, in terms of dynamics, in terms of comfort. That 528 is the sweet spot, and I shall explain why. So let me just read out some comments that I said here. So overseas reviews of the 528i that we found online mostly praised BMW's new 4-cylinder for its impressive muscle, and proceeded to temper praise with nostalgic recollection of lost 6-cylinder smoothness that the new engine notably misses. There's also the odd murmur of BMW's less than refined auto start stop system, which makes quite a racket each time it cranks up the engine. Yeah, that's true. That is something that I noted at the time, but I totally forgot about it. That time, right, BMW's early auto start stop systems, terrible. Every time when the engine starts, it just shakes you feel the whole car shaking. One, you gotta really wonder about the engine mount conditions of those cars with auto start stop. So yeah, these conclusions are accurate and consistent with our observations in this test car and from our international media drive in Spain last year, but they do not paint a complete picture. In my brief motoring journalism career, I've lavished plenty of good words on BMW test vehicles in these pages, but rarely does my praise for them extend to the subject of ride quality. BMW's insistence on fitting run flat tires and setting up stiff suspensions has in fact ruined the ride quality of many of its recent vehicles. They handle superbly, but when the road gets rough, you'll feel it. This new 528i changes that disposition, and with good reason. It rides beautifully. Compared to the previous 6-cylinder models, the new 528i absorbs bumps and potholes with great authority, pleasantly isolating the cabin from unwanted shocks. That sweet dynamic balance between responsive handling and pliant quality has been nailed spot on by BMW this time, and it gives the 5 an extremely well-rounded dynamic character that is simply beyond reproach. So yeah, so I'll say this again, as much as I prefer the 6-cylinder engines, dynamically speaking, the 528 N20 is the best balanced version of the F10 5 Series. And in fact, there is that impression that I get that the F10 platform feels best optimized for a 4-cylinder engine, right, in terms of its weight distribution and behavior. So the other thing about the F10 528 M Sport, all right, apparently I later learned that that the car had M Sport body on the outside, but it was running on standard suspension, so it was not sitting on M Sport suspension, and maybe that also helped with its comfort levels, right? And yeah, an interesting story to tell. I remember when I collected this 528i test car, right? So after I met the PR, I chit chat, signed documents, then I took the key. Then I walked to the car and I tried to open the door. Why isn't the door opening? And then she tell me, you haven't unlocked the door. Okay, I say, huh? We no keyless entry this car. So I was like, okay. Got in the car and drove off. So later on, got a chance to drive the 520i as well. All right, and so of course the 520i, my comments on the 520i. All right, of course there are some things that are missing from compared to 528, but I said I would be happy to make do with less equipment and power if it meant savings of 50,000 ringgit. What I was not quite prepared to accept was a regression in driving dynamics. While it was no surprise that the 520i did not seem to handle as sharply as the M Sport enhanced 528i, it was a bit shocking to discover that the 520i just didn't seem to absorb potholes and undulations as convincingly as the 528i did. You would expect an M Sport kitted BMW to ride harsher than the standard model, but in the 5 Series the reverse would seem true. After returning the test car, however, I have since learned that the 520i and the 528i M Sport have identical suspension settings for the Malaysian market, so the differences reported here might be due to the respective wheel tire combos or just varying conditions of the test car. I suspect it's the tires, because like with the 523i, the 520i also gets the not so nice looking 17-inch wheels and the Goodyear Excellence tires, which honestly I've not driven a car that fitted with these tires that handle well. So but the other thing is that performance wise, didn't find it lacking. Alright, the overall driving experience of the 520i is still pleasant, if not as outright impressive as the 528i. Compared to the 523i it replaces, the 520i is clearly an improved vehicle both in terms of straight line performance and driving dynamics. So so the next F10 5 Series variant that I drove was the ActiveHybrid 5. Yeah. Yes, you want love, you'll love. So the ActiveHybrid 5 was basically a 535i hybrid, and it's that thing is fast. If you think the 535i is fast, this thing is utterly insane. I think, if I recall correctly, I think I saw 252 kilometers per hour on the speedo. Yep. And I think, yeah, ride comfort less impressive. Yeah, so once again here in the ActiveHybrid 5, a 6-cylinder 5 series doesn't seem to have the kind of ride comfort that the 4-cylinder model does. What else did I say? Yeah, but the handling is good. Alright, in instances where most other cars would have surrendered to understeer, the ActiveHybrid 5 clings to its line with stubborn tenacity, but only if the tarmac is clear. Our test cast Continental tires gave up grip with surprising ease when the ground is sprinkled with sand. Perhaps not a fair comment to make. Alright, then yeah, so that was it. The ActiveHybrid 5, if you remember, was initially launched at a price of 648,000 ringgit, and after that the government gave duty exemption and the prices dropped to 498,000 ringgit, which made it even cheaper than the 535i. But honestly, I'd still prefer the 535 if you ask me. Yeah. So later on, I think in about 2014, 2015, BMW launched the F10 LCI, the facelift, and I didn't get to try much of the facelift. The only version of the facelift F10 that I test drove was the 520D, which interestingly I never drove as which was my first time reviewing at that time. BMW didn't register a pre-LCI 520D test car at that time, so compared to the M Sport kitted but standard sprung 520i we tested 2 years ago, our more recent 520D test cars seem less agile around corners. A surprising discovery, although one that can be easily explained by the engine's added weight over the nose. Diesel engines heavier. Absence of integral active steer may have played a part as well. I think BMW omitted integral active steer for the LCI altogether. There also seemed to be less mechanical grip, but this can perhaps be attributed to tire selection. Our 520D test car was 17-inch Goodyear Excellence tires, whereas the 520i came to us wearing 18-inch Dunlop SP Sports. Yeah. A much welcomed improvement on our 520D test car is the increasingly refined operation of BMW's auto start-stop system. Although not imperceptible, vibrations of the engine cranking cycles are far more effectively contained than the company's earlier applications, which had a habit of sending violent judders into the cabin. As sampled in the 520D, BMW's auto start-stop has become a lot easier to live with, and we commend the improvement. So, it's worth remembering, right? The F10 5 Series, when it was in the market, it was a segment leader. All right, it was in many ways a superior car to the Audi A6 and also to the W212 E-Class, which in its own right is also a fantastic car. But I think the F10 really dominated that segment in that time because it was such a great overall package, right? And when BMW introduced the N20 engine, it had everything, right? Even low road tax. So today, F10 is a great value buy in the used market, right? If you're willing to go for the early models, the 6-cylinder models, or even the early 520i's, right? They are going for 65-70,000 ringgit, which is ridiculously cheap for a car of that kind of capability. All right, you can get a 535 for about 85-90,000 ringgit. Yeah, so fantastic car. But the G30, when the G30 arrived, it dynamically, I think the G30 is far superior to the F10. I remarked before, right, when I drove the G30, it immediately made the F10 feel like a boat in comparison, right? Because the G30 is just so much more agile compared to the F10, which was already a very, very capable car. All right, yeah. So there you have it, guys. My thoughts on the BMW F10. All right, or many variations of it. But to sum up, my favorite variant of the F10 definitely is the 535i, but the best balance variant of the lot, overall performance versus efficiency versus dynamics, it's the N20 528i. Right, the 523 and 528 3.0, those are great if you appreciate the creamy smoothness of a 6-cylinder engine. Okay, so yeah, that's it for today's video, and hope you guys are keeping safe at home until my next video. Cheers, thanks for watching.